We're in the middle of the sugya of what you're able to go ahead and do on Chol Moed. We know that Davar Ovid is permitted, Sarach Rabim is permitted, Sarach Moed is permitted. If a poil, if the Maisa Hedyet is permitted, and a poil that has to eat, that's the fifth thing. Those are the five things that the Mishnah Berurah brings down that he arrives at from the Gemara. In order to facilitate understanding, now we have what an oris is, an oris, a chachir, and a kabla. An oris is a sharecropper. What a sharecropper does is that he takes a percentage and gives you a percentage. If he grows very little, you don't get anything. If he grows large, you get more. A chachir is that he says, I'm going to give you X amount, regardless. I'm going to give you X amount. And a kabbalah is a day worker, like a person who's makabel a job. So says the Gemara, we're up to 3 lines now where it gets white. Ha'arisin, again, the sharecropper takes a percentage. The chachirin, some takes a set amount. The kabbalah, some that you're a paid worker for a certain period of time. Harielu yasu, acherim bishvilan. Others people, Ariyasu, acherim bishvilan. Other people, in other words, if it's Chol Moed, other people are able to work for them. Hachamarim, donkey drivers, gamalim, camel drivers, safonim. Harielu yasu, they shouldn't work. V'imhayu muchrachim mischarim. But if they are paid for long periods of time, then they're able to go ahead and work. The difference between, again, is a sachir and an oris and these people. Why are they able to work? Because the oris and the sachir, it's they themselves are not the ground. It's they themselves who are the worker, and therefore other people can do. Mashen Kain over here. Another people can't do it. It's the drive himself, the chum himself, the saf himself. Therefore, they can do it. Ariel yasu. A person who's being paid by the day, even goes to another city, shouldn't do it. What do you mean? Even if he's a kabbalah, it shouldn't do. Mashma. It's the exact opposite svara. Kibilis is where's kididei dummy. Aleima being kibilis menshein kibilis, whether he's a kabbalah or not a kabbalah, to get extended amount of money. Lo yaseh. Let's say he's working while other people are working for him. The beisai lo yasu, shouldn't do it in his house. By yasachi yasu, in another house you could do it. Merioin berei deravin umar berei deravacha berei derava. You have Merion, the son of Ravin, and Marbarei, the Ravacha, the son of Rava. Who Gamla? They had this, the Torah. They had these two oxen that were together. Bahadi Adadi, Isra ben Milsa, the Marbarei, the Ravacha, Berei, the Rava. He was an Oval. Upaske Lagamle, and he disattached what? He disattached his ox from the work. Now it couldn't work because you need two oxen to work, but now you only had one ox. So he's an Oval, and he's causing L'chaira. Is causing Rav Amabarei a loss of money. Some Ravashi, Gava Rabba Kamabarei Davacha Avid Hachi, Nehidl Beseda the day, good he was, but Lechayish, Adachem Lechayish. Why isn't he worried about Merion? He's causing Merion a loss because as a result of him disengaging his ox, he won't be able to go ahead and work. So some of Tanya if they or their animals are hired by other people, they could work. Who Sava Adam Chashav Shiny. And he, Ma Breda Vacha Breda Rava, held that since he's an Adam Chashav and people might learn from his mistakes, from his actions, and Mimari had to for themselves, therefore he didn't do it. The Shaila in the Rishonim is, does he have to compensate by Merion for the money that he lost because he's not working? Right? He's not working. Does he have to compensate him? So or not? Or is the name Meshur Sadin? So the sugya basically is. If it's a din in the karka, then you shouldn't do it. If it's a din in yourself and you hire it out for a period of time aside from Chol Moed, then you could work. Adam said, Shmuel, says Shmuel, Mikable Kabilis, he goes into a contract with the Nachri. He's working, he wants the Nachri should work for him. B'toichat Chum, Asa. If it's B'toichat Chum, the Nachri can't work because it appears the body is working for him on Chol Moed. Chutz Chum where people won't see, outside the Chum where people will not see, then mutter, then it'll be permitted. Amra Papa, and even Chutz L'Tchum, I feel Chutz L'Tchum we haven't joined the Loya Maran. There's no chance of him being seen. There's no city that's near him. So therefore, if he's outside the Tchum, outside the 2,000 Amis, and there's no chance of him being seen, then you do it. Mashenkin, if there's a city that's close enough, even though it's 2,000 Amis away from his city, but it's close enough, then you shouldn't go ahead and do it. Then what? It would be awesome. The Jews who are the city could see these Jews working. They'll say that they will hire them. They hire them. This is Hilchos Shabbos, guys. This is Hilchos Shabbos. This is Hilchos Shabbos. This is Hilchos Shabbos. This is not speaking about Chalamoid. It's speaking about Shabbos. That's only Shabbos and Yontif. That's why I told you to hold off. Since there'll be traffic back and forth, then what? It will be usher. Let's say even if you're outside the tchum, it would be usher. So in other words, if you shouldn't come into a business deal with a nachri that he should work for you, right? Outside the tchum, if you did it, he's working on Shabbos, you don't have to say anything. If it's close to a city, then you would have to say something because the other city might see. If it's chol shel moed, even though it's not close to another city, even outside the tchum, it not be permitted because chol moed people take trips, and what are they going to see? Oh, look, his guy's working for him on chol moed, and that would not be permitted. Again, this whole sugya is what you can do chalamoid, what you can't do chalamoid again, and trying to go ahead and relate it to our times. But again, the site is basically a dava ovid, tzarech mayid, tzarech achila, b'makav hefsid. These are all the sites over here. Mazucha Bereder Rav Nachman, Boni Leapadna. Mazucha, the son of Rav Nachman, he built a palace. Mikabli Kabilas Chutzat. From what? From again Nachrim that he had hired, and it was outside the Tchum. Iklu Rav Safar Rav Huna Bar Chinana. They showed up there. Since it was built on Shabbos, they didn't go in. Look at the army. Even Mazuch himself did not go in. Why not? Since this was outside the Tchum, good. It was built on Shabbos, but it was outside the Tchum. He said it's permitted. So what did we say before? We said usually there's another city close by. No, there's no other city close by. It's Chalamoid. It's not Chalamoid. It's Shabbos. So l'chayra, why in the world did they not go in? After Gemara, Adam Chashav shiny. Another Chashav is different. Adam Chashav has to be careful of his actions. Another Chashav has to be so careful of his actions, as we see throughout Shas. So Gemara and Chulin, but going to a butcher shop. Even I forgot the Amira who was careful that not to say anything. People who learn from their actions be very makbid. Vikidiyami. Others say. In fact, Mazutra, he had helped him by going ahead and providing him with what? With teven for the bricks, with straws for the bricks. And he what? So they weren't contracted to work Shabbos. That he had actually helped them, and since he helped them, he did not what? He did not go in. Rav Chama or Rav Chama Shari Lahu La Bungari the Reish Galusi permitted the Bungari the Reish Galus. Rashi brings these are people who built either Masada Shulchanos, they built Shulchanos, they built tables. He permitted them Lemever Lahu Avidasa B'Chol Demoid. Permitted him to do avoid on Cholamoid. Amar why? Even the Ogo, since the Ogo like Shakli, since they don't take wages, Shuye Hu Dikam Shashile. They just get hana. You know, they're going to take a meal. So it's really an indirect hana. Since it's indirect hana, less lamba, and therefore what? You don't have to worry. It seems a very interesting shaila, guys, that it's mashma, these people, pashtus, if they're building the tables, it has to be tzarech hamoyed. You can't just build a table or correct the table if it's not tzarech hamoyed. So ostensibly, if they're building the table, it's a tzarech hamoyed. And the only heter over here was that what? The only heter over here was that it was not being paid with cash. It's only they were paid, it wasn't clear, they were being paid food. Mashma, if it was paid cash, even cholamoid, l'tzarech hamoyed, with the Rishayna make a diak, that would not be permitted. You shouldn't take money for, if you do work in cholamoid, you shouldn't take money for it. At least on the moed, you should take money for it. And that's why this is permitted. That's the chiddush over here, is that they were compensated for their money with food.
Well, if they took the money and bought food,
no, again, once you're paying them, it looks like you hired them on Yantav. Again, it's all what it looks like. The You can go into a contract with you can hire a guy on the Moed, to work after the Moed. In other words, a Chol Moed, you could hire him to work after the Moed. Uve Moed also, but in the Moed it's asked him to work. Klala Shel Dava, what's the rule of thumb? Kol Shu Oisev, anything that he can do, right? Then he could tell the guy to do. And anyone who doesn't, anything that you can't do, you can't tell the guy to do. I don't know a written contract. I don't know exactly. Tanya Idach, the Kablan.
You can't tell them to work after Yontif or on Yontif?
On Yontif. In other words, you can hire them. You can hire on Yontif on Chol Moed for after Yontif.
Right, but if, let's say you're asking them to do something you're not allowed to do on Chol Moed, you're allowed to hire them on Chol Moed after Chol Moed. I'm just trying to understand that.
Yeah. After Chol Moed. After Chol Moed. Yeah. After Chol Moed. Tanya Idach mekablim kibolos b'mayed lasoisol la'achar mayed. Another brisa that seems to be a corollary. Someone can go ahead and hire a guy on Chol Moed to do work after the Moed. Ubilvad shla yimdoid shla yishkol shla yimne kider shoyse b'chol. I would imagine that if you're hiring for a certain job, I'm guessing this. Let's say you hire him as a contractor to build a space, right? To build carpentry, to build a bookcase. So he would not be permitted to take the measurements. On Chol Moed, you hire him to build it after the Moed. Still, that on Chol Moed, he should not take the measurements. Again, it appears if what he's going to be working on, he's doing Chol Moed work. So therefore, if it's something that depends upon measurements or weight or counting, you shouldn't do it. Kederach shoyse b'chol. Tanrabanan ein marvian behema b'chol shel Moed. Now, the animals sometimes need a little assistance in fostering offspring. So you're not allowed to go ahead, mate an animal, to be involved in the actual mating process of the animal. In other words, to put them in the corral is one thing, but to help the zacha within the keva, that it's a tircha, and that would not be permitted. Now, just outside quickly, a b'char bisman hazeh, if you own it, you got a big problem because it's kodesh. It's kodesh merechem. Therefore, anyone who's a farmer and has an animal that's pregnant with their firstborn will always go into a partnership with a guy to avoid this problem. Because if it's born and it's owned by a Jew, it's a carbon. It has kachim. Kachim is manazeh, guys, you have grace at tzaris. However, there is a unique waiver. Is the bechor gets a mum, then you can eat it in barbecue in the back. If it gets a mum, get barbecue. However, you can't work the bechor. Psulei mikdashim is an animal that was kaidesh, then got a mum, and you can't bring it as a carbon. But you also, as well, are not allowed to work it. So therefore, it says, that will be working the animal. In other words, nothing to do with Chol Moed, nothing to do with Shabbos. It's a din in kachim. You can't. This is considered working. If you go ahead and make the animals together, that's a din in working, and therefore you will not be able to do it on any time.
Once the animal, the kachim is off the animal, and the Chol Moed is malacha.
Okay.
So what's the comparison?
The comparison is what you can do, what you can't do. Just like you can't go ahead and become tircha and make it and go ahead and work an animal in the Moed. Kiyotze boy, similar to that. It's a similar thing. Both cases, you're mating the animals, Yankel. You don't gotta be going nuts over here, right? Again, there's no lumdus here. You can't do it for different reasons, but you can't do it. You can't do it. One, you can't do it because tircha the Moed. The other one is because it's a din of the animal. But again, why does it have to be the exact sushla? Why? The action is the same. Isn't the action the same? You're doing the exact same thing. Tanya idach. 1 second. Chamoira shetava, a chamoira, a female donkey that is being taiveya a male, she's in heat. Marvin Allah zach, and then you could bishvil shaloi titztane, that she shouldn't lose her she shouldn't cool down. Why? Because that would be a davar of it. That would be she would cool down and she wouldn't mate, and that would be a davar of it. That would be something, and we know by now that a davar of it, taking the loss on the Moed, is what is you're permitted to work. However, you could put them in the corral knowing that they're going to mate. You just don't aid the process. You can put them in there. You go ahead. What they would do is they would take animals, they put them in the field, and they would eat the grass and do what animals do, and they would continue to move them on different parts of the field to go ahead and fertilize the field. So that you can't do on Shabbos, you can't do on Yontif, you can't do on Chol Moed. Now, two pshatim. If the animals come by themselves, or if Nachrim come and do it for you, mutter. However, you can't help them. And while the goyim, this is Rashi in the Ksav Yad, while the goyim is doing it, you can't go ahead and facilitate them working to fertilize your field by having a shomer watching their tzayin. If he's a weekly worker, a monthly worker, or a year worker, or a 7-year worker, then what? You're able to help him. And you'll be able to go ahead and even hire somebody to watch when they work. Rabbi says, the Shabbos, a guy who goes ahead and fertilizes the field on Shabbos, the toiva, you give him a karas a toiv. Beyond this, you give him a little food if he does it. If he doesn't, the Moed, you can give him money. I'm Rabbi Yosef, the halacha is one is like Rabbi. The halacha is like Rabbi. Okay, we had a Mishnah that we got into this. The first Mishnah in the parak is that you're not if you have let me just olives, and they're soft. And what are you able to do to go ahead? So Rabbi Yehuda limited it to putting one beam on top of it. And Rabbi Yosef said, no, you can do the whole process. Good. Rabbi Yosef's guys, you can go ahead, do the whole process. Squeeze the oil out, put it in jugs. And now we're going to have the same din by wine. We're going to have the same din by wine. Says the Gemara. You have the yayin in the bar, the iru, aval, or einis, the exact same for, let's say a person becomes an aval or an einis occurs. Oishet or is poilim, trick him. The Gemara in the Bab Metzia, the 6th parak, says up to Chatzia Yom they can change. Zoylif Goimer, you can go ahead and draw it out, complete it, give a gap, and seal it, Kedarkai normally. Rabbi Yossi. Just as Rabbi Yossi says you could do it by olives, so too he says you could do it by wine. The Gemara will make a tzricha, so why do you need to tell me what? Both cases. The Gemara will tell me, why do you need to tell me both cases? Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi comes first over here. In the Mishnah before, Rabbi Yehuda came first. Rabbi Yehuda, you can make some type of covering, right? B'shvil in order that does the vinegar, but you will not be able to complete the process, put it in bottles and or jugs or barrels and put them a gupa in and close it up. That you won't be able to do. Fred says the we have two mishnayos telling us apparently about the exact same din. Says the Gemara b'tzricha. You need to tell me by olives, and you need to tell me the same din by wine. Tiash if you tell me the first mishnah that's speaking about olives, he come Rabbi Yossi. There Rabbi Yossi says you can go ahead and finish the job. Mishum the nichsha nafish beseda, because why? There's a big loss. It seems that olive oil was expensive. Aval chamra doi nafish beseda. But wine, which doesn't seem to be a monetary loss, Ema, I would say Moedalel Rabbi Yehuda, just to keep it from becoming chaymitz, but you won't be able to go to tircha to go ahead and bottle it and stuff it and everything. So it's kamashmal, and then no, that even in this case where it's not as much of a loss as olive oil, Rabbi Yossi would permit you to go ahead and bottle the wine. If you just tell me the case by wine, by hikam Rabbi Yehuda, since it's not such a big monetary loss. But by olives, where it's a monetary loss, by the olive oil, Ema Moedel Rabbi Yossi, that what you could do it normally in a normal manner. Tzricha to tell me even there Rabbi Yehuda's machmer. So the Reish is telling me the chumrah of Rabbi Yehuda, and the Seif is telling me the kula of Rabbi Yossi, that even where it's not such a monetary loss, you're able to go ahead and complete it. Okay? What? Loss. Each person defines loss differently. I don't think so. I would think that if you take loss means that you lose. You're losing. Forget about your wallet. Forget about your pocketbook. You're a millionaire, and the guy's a pauper. You have the exact same amount of wine. If you lose X amount of bottles, it's the same loss. You're attaching loss as an accountant. How much money are you losing? It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the actual loss of the chayfetz, of the object, right? It's irrelevant of the individual. Amrav Yitzchak Barabba, Mantana Shinoi b'moyed b'davar ovid. Who's the one who says when it comes to moyed, the heter of davar ovid, where you're able to go ahead, if it's going to take a monetary loss, that you're able to go ahead and do something, but you have to do it all day shinoi, like put it on top of boards or something. Who is that? The like Rabbi Yossi. It's not like Rabbi Yossi. Why? Because Rabbi Yossi says what? Zoylif kedarkoi, dof kedarkoi, just do it normally. That's the way. Not like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi, Hilchos like Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. When it comes to davar avud, you can go ahead and do it in the normal way. Boy, me name Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Mahu lemesha chavita de shichra b'kol demoed. What's the halacha about sealing a barrel of beer and chol hamoed? So we know you can do it by olives. We know you can do it by wine. What about beer? So Amalahu Sinai Amahalacha Rabbi Yossi. So he told him, Rav Nachman Yitzchak told him that Sinai, that's Rabbi Yossi, who's a Sinai. The Sinai like a Harim. The Sinai is a person who knows all over, like a Harim is with depth. So now, Halacha Rabbi Yossi. So Emadam Rabbi Yossi, that's Bechamra. He says by wine. Bishikrami Amar. Does he say it by what? By beer? So he says, yeah. Chamra, time of my. What's the reason you're able? Rabbi Yossi says you're able to seal wine in a normal manner. Mishum dinafish pseida. Because what? You have to take a loss. Shechanami is pseida. So the same svara that Rabbi Yossi permitted you to do it by wine would permit you to do it what? By beer, because you're taking a monetary loss. Okay. The Amr Abaya said, Amrli aim. Right. Now we have many times in Shas, right? Guys, Abaya was raised by what? By his nanny. He had a nanny. It's fascinating. He was raised by Rabbi Nachmani, who was his uncle. Right? He learned by Rabbi Yosef, but he was a Yosem. In fact, the word Abaya stands for Asher Becho Yeruchim Yosem. I got the Abaya. Aleph Beis Yud Yud. Asher, that Becho in you, Yeruchim Yosem HaKadosh Baruch Hu has Rahman. Yeruchim Yosem. So that's what Abaya stands for. So my nanny told me, Bashesh Save Vishia, 6 sa is sealed, is better mi bartamne v'leishia than 8 that not sealed. So you see that what? That there's a pseida, there's a loss. Right? In other words, if you're not going to seal it, you're going to lose 2 sa. Rather have 6 sa that is sealed than 8 that are not. Hilchos Moed Hilchos Katan. A very ambiguous statement, guys. Amar Rav Chaim bar Guria, Amar Rav Hilchos Moed Hilchos Katan. Now, what does that mean? Hilchos Moed Hilchos Katan. It's a very ambiguous statement. So let's see Rashi. Hilchos Katan. Damrinan Heicha de Achzik. Whatever they kept, they kept. Heicha de Achzik loy Achzik. They didn't keep. Okay, little history lesson. When Sancheriv came and mixed up the world. We've done this before. Sancheriv came and mixed up the world. He settled people from Kuta in a place called the Shomron. They ostensibly were Gerim, maybe. They kept what they kept. What they didn't keep, What they kept very, very religiously. What they didn't keep so religiously. And it was a shaila throughout the Gemara, whether they Geri Emes, they were true Gerim, or Geri Aroyos, not Aroyos with an ayin, with an aleph. They had talk about a rodent problem. They had a feline problem. They had a problem with lions. Lions were eating them up. And trust me, a glue trap is not going to work on a lion. They eventually found they were serving on Harzaisim, Haratsoifim. They found pigeons that they were serving Avodah Zarah. They turned out to be Avodah Zarah. So when it says over here kutim, it's during the time probably before they were ascertained that they were mamish goyim, right? That they weren't really gerim. So now he's saying the following: Hilchas Moed, Hilchas Kutim, behalacha lemay hilchasa. Rav Daniel bar Katina loyma shein akurois ve'in lemud zemizeh. Says Rashi, there are akurois ki isha akara, like a barren woman. Shein la'adam imenu pri. A person doesn't have any children. Elagufa, only the body itself. Ve'in lemudim zumizu. Says Rashi, the ema, and to say kishem shezumu teres kachzumu teres kimo bekutim. V'lo yamina ki hechi nemachzik bahai. You don't go ahead and learn from them. In other words, just like the kutim are not consistent, they keep something, they keep other things. So too the halachas of cholamoy you don't learn from. Some things are one way and some things are in other ways. So don't learn one from the other. Shmuel says, here's an example of that ambiguous statement. Zoifson kusasa, you can smear a small cup to go ahead and make sure it doesn't leak. Ve'in zoifsin chavisa, but you can't go ahead and smear a barrel to seal the barrel. Rev Dimi minadayim, no. Zoifsin chavisa, you could do a chavisa. Ve'in zoifsin kuzasa. So in other words, guys, what would you say? You'd say, 1 second. Once I can smear one thing, I can smear the other thing. No, just like the kutim, you don't learn one thing from the other thing. Also, in chalamoid, you don't learn one thing from the other thing. You can smear one thing on chalamoid, you can smear another thing. One says you can smear small, one says you can smear large. What's the difference? It depends. Says the Gemara, I'll tell you what the difference is. Mar chayish lepseida, one is chayish for pseida, and therefore only the barrel, only the cup. So the one who says you could smear the cup and not the barrel, it's a tircha to do the barrel. The one who says you can smear the barrel and not the cup, why? Because he's worried about pseida. You're going to take a bigger loss if you don't smear the barrel. So again, you see an example of this, even though they seem similar, just like the kutim, you can't learn from the other, so to Hilchas Chalamoid you can. Rabbi Naktina, the following Messiah, Hilchas Moed, Hilchas Shabbos. The Hilchas Moed is like Hilchas Shabbos on the days. Now, guys, Shabbos we learned. What do we say? There's some things you chayiv on, there's some things you pata avalasa, and there's some things you mutta. Yeah, 3 things. Chalamoid is like that. Yesh men ptur avalasa, yesh men mutta lechatchila. Says Rashi, top Rashi. Yesh men pata pat avalasa. Vaydik tani ein zeifsim asal l'mav lechatchila. That means you shouldn't do lechatchila. But if you do it, le'avi chayiv. Don't go ahead and smear. But if you do it, you're okay. And the one who says Zaifsin, you mutal lechatchila. In other words, he's giving you an example of how Hilchas Chalamoid is like Hilchas Shabbos. When it says, guys, you can't smear a cup, that means lechatchila you can't smear the cup. But if you smear the cup, you ever be okay. Zaifsin, I feel lechatchila, you could do it. So therefore, says Abaya Hilchas what? The Chalamoid is similar to Hilchas Shabbos. Rav Huna chatztu lechitzta b'mayada. Rav Huna went ahead and he harvested, he cut down on a field, he cut down what on Shabbos, right? And the question is, he had what to eat. So if he didn't have what to eat, he could do it. So how could on Chol Moed, I said Shabbos, Chol Moed, how could he do this? Rabbi Rav Huna, to his father Rav Huna, Toichnin kemach b'moed. You were able to go ahead and grind kemach on the moed. That's tzarech hamoed, when you need it for the moed. For if you need food, you need grain for the moed, grind it. If you don't need it for the moed, it's asa. Something that you're going to take a monetary loss in the moed. Muta last slice of b'moed. Asa. The medam amurim. When is that? Is betlushin if it's disattached from the ground, right? Just betlushim in a karka. Avamuchubel karka. If something is connected to the ground. Afilu kulu of it asa, even the whole thing would be asa. And if you don't have what to eat, kaitzer, you could cut it. Uma'amer, and you can gather it in piles. Vidash, you can go ahead and thresh. Vizoira, you can winnow. Uboira, the toichen, and you could separate the pebbles. The toichen, you can grind it. Ubevachla yidish beparis, provided you don't go ahead when you're going to go ahead and do disha threshing, you won't use paros to go ahead and walk over them. Bottom line is, what do we see? The whole heta for David of it was what? By something that was disconnected from the ground, not something that was what was attached. And here we see Rav Huna went ahead and cut attached, and ostensibly he had what to eat. So his son Rabbi Rav Huna asked on Rav Huna from a brisa. He told his son, Rav Huna told his son, Rabbi Yechidahi. That brisa that we just quoted is an individual's interpretation. In other words, it's his interpretation. It's not the rabbin. It's not the majority. It's the minority opinion. And I don't hold like that. The Tanya, Klalam Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Mishum Rabbi Yosi, Dava hatolish min karka. If something that's disconnected from the ground, I feel a mitzasei of it mutta. Even if only part of it is of it, it's mutta. Have a mechubel karka. If something that's connected to the ground. I feel cool of it asa, right? I feel the whole thing would be asa if it's connected to the ground. Now, if you're going to tell me this is Rabbi Yosi, yadishnami b'paros, you should go ahead and be able to go ahead and dash with the paros. Well, Rabbi Yosi says, guys, what do we say in the Mishnah? You don't have to make any shinuyim. So why don't you go ahead and do it in a normal way? So Mitzvah Rabba Mantana Shina b'Moed b'Dava Ovid Loik Reb Yaisi. Allah Hachanami keeping the Chol Yom Alav b'Faris Taish. In other words, not everyone uses what parais. It's not the normal way, and therefore what it would not be. You don't have to use them. Okay, the bottom line is that's the Yachid, and therefore the did what he did. Going over the Brisa, so you can grind on the Moed for the Moed. But if you're grinding for something that's after the Moed, it's not permitted. So let's say you grind from the Moed and you have leftover, it's permitted to use. You don't think that, since I have extra, I can't use it because I did work on Chol Moed. No, you could use it. You can cut down trees for the purpose for wood for the Moed. But right, the same halacha we just stated. If you cut down and you have leftover, it's permitted. Matil and sheikha b'moed, you can brew beer in the moed. The tzarech hamoed if you need it. Shloit tzarech hamoed aser. Then hittel the heister if you go ahead and brew it and you have leftover. Havisem muta ubavad shlo yarim. Provided you don't do what a haram, a trick. Guys, watch. You have two people in your house and then you drink X amount. They drink a gallon. Let's say a gallon. You go ahead and make 20 gallons. No, that's not going to work. If you make 4 gallons, 2.5 gallons, okay, that'll be permitted. But something that's an exuberant amount, that's harama, that is not permitted. Now, it's mashma over here. You're able to go ahead and you could, if you have leftover. Okay, now wait a minute. Matilin sheikha b'moed, you can brew the tzarech hamoed. Ushloy tzarech hamoed. Good. That's the same as we just said. And shaloi l'tzarech hamoed is aser. Echad sheichet tamarim, whether it's date beer. Echad sheichet tzarim, whether it's barley beer. And even if you have old beer, existing beer, marim, you can make a trick. V'shoisim in achadash. So you see, you could make aroma. Like in other words, even if you could make aroma. So the Brisa before says she says you can't. Here we said you could make a trick. So it's Tanoy, it's machlekes Tanoyim. The Tanya. You can't make a trick by making too much. In fact, you could. Okay, very good. Rav chotzlei chitz the b'chol the moed. Rav cut down again the field in Chol Moed, and Shama Shmuel ikvit. Shmuel heard about it. He was makbid again. Obviously, he held like the first das of the Mishnah of the Brisa that we quoted. Let's say Shmuel holds like the yichidah that we quoted above. It says that was a case where there wasn't a davar or avod. It was wheat. It would have stayed until after Yontif, and he could have kept it. Guys, wheat is very late in barley develops early. That's why it being the kites from the barley. Chol Moed Pesach, the wheat is very fresh. You have nothing to lose by leaving it over. That's why the shtei lechem brought on Shavuos is bought from wheat. So he cut down a field of wheat on Moed. So therefore, he said it was not a davar of it. For Rav, my time of why did Rav do this? Why he didn't do this? Elam ayochel, guys. He didn't have what to eat. Guys, one of the heterim is what if you need what to eat. And Shmuel Simon Kamei. Shmuel did not know that. When Shmuel is makbid, but Rav did. He had known that Rav didn't have what to eat. Inami, he held Adam Choshev Shiny. Even if you have a heter by a dava avod, right? That even if you're hungry, right? Forget about dava avod. Even if you're hungry and you don't want to eat dava, Adam Choshev Shiny, different. Again, we had before. Okay, now to the Mishnah, we're going to deal with Adam Choshev. Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya. Now, don't mix up Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya with Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. I always tell this, guys. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was a Beinu HaKadosh. He had a son, Rabbi Gamliel. He had a son, Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya. That's Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya. Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya had a son, Hillel Nasiya. Hillel Nasiya is the one who made the calendar. The one we have a calendar. Again, people mistakenly think it's the Tanahil. It's the Amira. Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya was an Amira, and his son was an Amira. Okay, now, so Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya Nafik v'Chamasa the Mudasha. He went ahead and he went out with a signet ring on I guess it was Shabbos. The Ashti Maya, the Achim Kafela Arma, and he drank water that a goy had gone ahead and cooked. That's a Bishalakim problem, maybe. Shomer Ravami heard what Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya did, and Ikbed was makbid. Rav Yosef, my time Ikbed, why is so makbid? If you're worried about a signet ring, Hatanya, We said hashirin a pin and a zomim a nose ring, but the boys in a ring. Harihin call hakelim and he told him b'chatzir, like any kelim that go out in the chatzir. So therefore, it's not a problem. Imishum the ishtei maya the achim kapel arma, and if you drank water and you drank water the ishtei achim kapel arma, hamashmul by yitzchak amarav, kol shenechal k'moshu chai. Anything that can be eaten as it is before you cook it, ain't b'mishum bishul nachrim. And in the sugya bishul akam, fellas, rule number one is that if you can eat it, even if you cook it, it doesn't make a difference. You know, if a guy would cook an applesauce, since you can eat the apple, it's not bishul akam. You can drink water. So it's not bishul akam. So what's the problem? Also, signet on Shabbos, it's not a problem. You can go out with it. If it's bishul akam, why are you Ravami? Makman of Yehud Nasiya. And you know what the answer is? Adam chashav shiny. Again, that this is the whole sugya. So why was he makbid? So Adam chashav shiny. Amrav Chanan, another example is Amrav Chanan Amarav. Koitzis Adam dekel b'moed. A person cut down a dekel, a palm tree in the moed. Af b'shen etzarich elul l'naiseres shaloi. Even though you only needed sawdust. Let's say you need sawdust, you go ahead, cut down a whole tree for the sawdust. It seems to be you're doing a big action for a little result. Machna shoyts, you can do it. Light Allah by a curse the person who did this. Ravashi Havile Abod Bishal Naya. He had a forest in Shalnaya. Also, he went. He's going to cut it on Chalamoid. I guess L'Tzarech Hamoid. He needed it. Amalei Rav Shila Bishal Naya said Rav Shila from that place. Ravashi my daitcha the come Rav Chanan Lam Rav Koitz Adam Dekel B'Moed Af Bishen and Circle on the Search Shaloi. What's your das to go in conjunction Rav Chanan? Halait Allah by a cursed it. So Ravashi said, "Lo shmirli." I didn't hear a curse. Claimar, "Lo svirli." I don't hold of it. I don't hold of it by his curse. Don't leave your home with it. Ishtamit narga, as Rav Ashi was about to hack the tree, the axe, the iron part of the axe became loose, and boy lemifsake l'shake was going to split open his thigh. Guess what he did? Shafke v'hada. He left the job and he returned. He didn't want to deal with it by his curse. Also, Rav Yehuda Shari Lemeka Kisna. Rav Yehuda came along and Vahada Asa. Rav Yehuda, I read it wrong. Vahada Asa, and he returned. Now, Rav Yehuda Shari Lemeka Kisna. He permitted to go uproot flax. Ulemikdel Keshusa, and to go ahead and cut hops. Ulemeka Shumshimi, and to uproot sesames on Chalamoid. Amalei Abaya Rav Yosef Bishlema Kisna. You needed to start Chalamoid. Cause lechafifa, you can use it to cover something, cover food. Kishusa hops, chazi l'shichra, you can go ahead and mix beer. Ela shumshimi l'may chazi. What can you do with shumshimim? What can you do with sesames? Says tomorrow, chazi l'naisa the ispahu. You can go ahead and use it for the seeds. This can make sesame oil from the seeds. Ravyani haviliahu partisa. Ravyani had this orchard. The mate is mandi b'chol the moed that it came right in Chol Moed. Katfe, he cut it down. The shon, of course, it was dava of it. Katfe the shon the next year. Shahayas kula alma the pradisa. Everyone waited in their pardis the chol of the moed, and they did like Rav Yanai. So after Rav Yanai the pradisa who shased. That year he was mafkis pardes again. An example of adam chashav shiny people learning from someone's actions without knowing the lumdus behind it. Let's go a little weiter. Machnis adam peiroisa b'tnei aganoven. Things you can do in chol moed. If you have fruits that's out in the field, outside, you want to go ahead. It's not the tircha of bringing it into the house. Because again, you can bring it in. The shula pishtonim and amishra, you're able to go ahead. If you have pisht and flax that's soaking, you're able to take it up. Bishfil shlei tova, that it shouldn't get ruined. All this is permitted with one addendum, that you could have not done it before the moed. You can't leave it to do it on the moed. If you leave it to do in the moed, they can't see you and you can't do it. It has to be that what it happened to be that it ended up that way. So let's say the flax has to soak for 10 days. So it's the 10th day is going to be in the middle of Chalamoid. Great, then you can do it. But let's say you go ahead and make it. In that scenario, you have to put it in then to take it in the moed that you shouldn't do. For kulan and kivnu malachnu the moed, if you're mechuvin your malacha and Chalamoid, Yavodu, you're going to take a loss. The Chachamim using the halacha of hefker, best and hefker, taking your property, mafk your property, you're going to lose your property for being over on being mechal cholamoid. Interesting Gemara. Tana, ubevachi yachnisam b'tzina l'toich beislay. When it says over here, you can go ahead and do the peiros, do it in a clandestine way. That don't do it in broad daylight. Do it in a clandestine way. Rabbi Yosef Havli Kishure, he had these beams. Ailinu be a mom, and he brought them during the day. Abaya said to Rabbi Yosef, so why don't you do it at night, where it would have been mitzina rather than during the day? So Amalei, so Rabbi Yosef retorted to Abaya, Sinna Dahani Yamamahu, that sinna of beams is the daytime. You want to know why? Because keeping the Balayla, boy Gavri Yiseri, since at night you'll need more people, Uboy Meduchri B'denura, you'll need light. Av Shemilsa, more people, it'll make a big rash. It'll be much, in Yiddish we say, it'll make a garida, and therefore that will not be b'tzina. During the day, less people are involved and quietly, and therefore I can take it during the day because of Ganov. You're able to go ahead and that's soaking the pishtan, you're able to take it out. Let's say the following. A very interesting shayla, guys. So we ascertained in the Mishnah that if a person is mechaven to do something in the moed, we cancel him and he can't have use from it. We're going to take it away from him. Here's the shayla. Is that an isser in the chefza or an isser in the gavra? Is it a din in the object or a din in the person? What would the nafkamina be if that person dies? If it's a din in the person, then his sons, we won't take it away from his sons. So if a person was mechaven in the moed to go ahead and harvest his peiros, we won't take it away from him, from his sons, because there's a din in the person and the person's no longer here. But if it's a din in the peiros that he left, then despite the fact that he's no longer here, he would take it away. That's the shayla the Gemara presents, and it presents a few scenarios to be placed the shayla. So now, a person's mechabed in the moed to finish the malacha. He died, and he dies. Will we go ahead and count his sons afterwards? If you're going to say Amid Aleph. Again, a Bechar, we just mentioned, a Bechar, it behooves you that this Bechar should get a mum, because if it doesn't, you're stuck. The Kahanim were chayish, guys. The Kahanim were chayish, they weren't trusty to put a mum in the animal, because they didn't want to deal with kachim, despite the fact they were not chayish. So now, Soyrim Oiznim Bechar, if a Koyim went ahead and he put a mum in the ear of the Bechar, Kansu B'noi Achrov, Mishum V'Isur Daraisa. Why we're going to cancel the son afterwards? Because why? It's an Issa Daraisa. So in other words, we want to say be Pasha the Shaila. Just like by Bechor, we're going to say that the son can't have enough from it. So too, if work was done on Chalamoid, you can't have enough from it. Says the Gemara, there's a big difference. By Chalamoid, by the Bechor, it's a din daraisa. By here, this is Rashi Shita, and Taisha Shita, it's a din derabanan. That avoida on Yom Kippur on Chalamoid is derabanan. So maybe we don't cancel him. Another example that potentially we can use to go ahead and answer the question is selling your evet to a guy. Now the halacha is an evet is mechuyev mishras keisha, but if you sell it to a guy, then you're going to be mafker from the mitzvah. So the halacha is that you have to buy him back and free it. And if you don't buy him back and he runs away, you kill him. So now, you know why? Because each day that he was sold to the guy, he's mafker in mitzvahs. So over there, clearly it's a din in the cheftza. The evid's the cheftza and the bechor is the cheftza. But hachamai over here, by working a chalamoid, is a din in the cheftza or the gavra. Gavra kanis rabbanon, and therefore the holesa is not here, and therefore the alum the shashayla, the son will be able to use the produce that was produced as a result of an action on chalamoid that he shouldn't have done. Maybe it's a din in the cheftza, in the object, and they cancel him. For Isser, and that cheftza is still around, and even the son, therefore, not be able to have enough from it. So Amalei, so Rabbi Zera told Rav Yirmiyah, Tinisua, you learned the answer. Sada, a field, shenis kavtza b'shvias, that you remove the thorns in shvias, tizra l'moitzi shvias, you're able to plant moitzi shvias. Now, even though you did something wrong, you're able to plant moitzi shvias. The tavia and the dari, if you did type of fertilization, loy sizra l'moitzi shvias, you can't go ahead and you can't go ahead and have use of moitzi shvias. So you see, guys, it's a din mad in the cheftza.
It could be the other one also, the second one.
Like Tizra l'moitzi shvias. Why? If it's a din in the person, it's a din, you see, it's a din in the cheftza. If you go ahead and take the following to the bank, if you go ahead and fertilize your field, right? If you go ahead and you fertilize your field you fertilize the field, umeis benoi zaira, and mais, then his son can go ahead and he can plant. Alma l'didei konser rabbanon lebrei konser rabbanon. So what do you see? That obviously that what it's not him, it's the him, not the field, and therefore the son. So you push the shaila. If you do on Chol Moed, if you do something, so hachanami l'didei konser rabbanon, because you did the actual work on Chol Moed lebrei konser rabbanon. Rabbi and Aktinon, we learned the following. Tima taroisa of a mace, like konser b'nei achrav. Okay, guys, outside, take a look at me. We know there's something called masik. You can be masik somebody. Good. So let's say you have truma, over here, or you have chulin that you keep the tar, and I'm tamei. I go like this. Do I have to pay? What's the shaila? It's a hezek she'enoi nikar. It's a damage that it's not noticeable. The damage is not noticeable. So it's Gemara Aruchin in Masechta Gittin that hezek she'enoi nikar lo yishmei hezek. But the Rabbanan consider the guy who did it that he has to pay. What happens if the guy dies? Does the son have to pay? No. Same thing. Says the Gemara the following. So Naktinon tima teroisav, a person's metama, the tyrus of his friend, umeis, and then he dies. Like konsu b'noi achrav, my timer. Hezek sheina nika, a hezek that's not recognizable. Loishme hezek is not a hezek. The didei konsu rabbanon, the person who did it, we kansa lebrei like konsu rabbanon. So tomorrow morning, Bez Hashem, at 9:00. Looking forward to seeing the people who have on vacation in Florida.
Have a wonderful trip, Rabbi Stern.
Thank you. No, we'll be in touch.